No one authored themselves. No
Right.
one created themselves. The only thing you've got is your brain and its states, and that is based on your genes and the totality of environmental influences you as a system have had.
The argument against free will, in my view, is based upon something broader than just scientific analysis or empirical research. Rather, we can build an argument, I think, from a law of logic, the proposition that P must either be true or false, and it can't be both, it can't be neither. It has to be one or the other. Now, this law of the excluded middle, one of the foundational precepts of philosophy, we can simply ask a question of any kind of mental activity, and this will be regardless of whether it's material or immaterial. That's what makes this a crucial argument, and an important one, a pertinent one, is that you can ask of that mental activity, is it determined or is it not? That is it determined by anything else, or is it completely undetermined by anything? If it's undetermined by anything, then it's random, and you're by definition not in control of that which is random. If it's determined by something, then it's either determined by something further inside your mind or inside your brain or indeed inside your soul, or it's determined by something external to your brain. If it's determined by something external to yourself, I should say yourself rather than your brain here to rid this conversation of any implicit materialism, exterior to yourself, if that's what's determining the action, then clearly you're not in ultimate control of that action. If it's something inside of yourself somewhere, then all you do is push the problem back and you ask the question again, is that thing determined or is it indeterminate? So indeterminate, it's random. Determined, you keep going back until you either terminate in something outside of the self, something, or I suppose something undetermined and therefore random, either of which you are completely out of control in.
Our entire legal system is founded on the presupposition that free will exists. The United States Supreme Court has said that a universal and persistent foundation stone in our system of law, and particularly in our approach to punishment, sentencing, and incarceration, is the belief in freedom of the human will and a consequent ability and duty of the normal individual to choose between good and evil, and that it is a long accepted view that people have the ability and duty to choose. But what if free will does not actually exist? That is to say, among other things, what if humans are indeed not the authors of their thoughts and desires? What if people could not have acted differently than they did? Without free will, our ideas of justice, punishment, sentencing, fairness, and the law itself all become incredibly flawed, to say the least. I believe that there is no free will, that the concept of free will is the grandest of illusions that has fooled our courts and infected our justice system. You always end up doing what you want. You ultimately choose the option you desire the most, but you do not control or choose what you want and desire. That is entirely out of your control. If we grant that free will does not exist, what then are the implications of this on our system of justice? Let's look at 6 types of justice and sentencing ideologies, starting with the one that makes no sense without free will. Retribution and punitive justice seeks to punish someone's wrongful actions. Punishment as a concept makes no sense if someone did not have the free choice when committing an unlawful action. It makes no sense to be mad at a criminal who has no free will and to seek retribution. Be mad at the situation. Be mad that a bad thing happened, sure, but don't be mad at the criminal themselves, as without free will, they are nothing more than a conscious observer to their actions. Deterrence-based justice seeks to prevent illegal activity by creating consequences that people want to avoid. This is possibly the most pragmatic of the theories of justice presented here. In a world without free will, there would still need to be consequences for crimes if you want to reduce illegal activity. But is this concept fair in a world without free will? Why is it fair to punish someone without free will so that other, unrelated people won't commit crimes in the future? Nothing seems particularly fair about this. Then again, does fairness in this context even have meaning in a world without free will? Maybe the immorality behind punishing a person without free will is outweighed by the effect it will have on preventing greater immorality in the future, but I'm not totally convinced of this somewhat utilitarian approach. What about someone who wasn't deterred by consequences not because of who they are as a person, but because they were unaware of the law? What end does it serve to punish them in the hopes of deterring those who are aware of the law? After all, people unaware of the law are not at any point successful targets of a deterrence-based approach. Maybe at the very least it creates an incentive to not be ignorant of the law. I fear that deterrence-based justice may create more questions than answers, but it remains the case that, at least from a pragmatic viewpoint, some form of consequence is needed to reduce the criminal activity that society doesn't like. But I'm not sure that pragmatic concerns alone are dispositive here, and I'm not sure that I have a good solution to all of this. It is also possible that a purely deterrence-based approach to justice would yield more or less the same sentencing outcomes as we have now, but I submit that the means, motive, and understanding behind those outcomes matter a great deal. Rehabilitation-based justice seeks to reform a criminal so that they will no longer commit crimes. This theory of justice at least starts to make some sense in a world without free will. Focusing sentencing on rehabilitating an offender makes sense from a pragmatic view, and there is no punishment here for punishment's sake. There is no retribution or vengeance being considered with rehabilitation. Rehabilitation can recognize an individual's lack of free will and seek to change them so that they will be less likely to commit illegal acts in the future. However, if there is a case where someone commits a crime that was a one-off, or they self-reform where they will not commit more crimes in the future, and there is no indication that they will continue to break the law, rehabilitation makes no sense as a sentencing consideration in this type of case. Incapacitation-based justice isolates a legal transgressor from society so that they cannot harm anyone. Even without free will, it makes sense that those who will continue to harm society when not restrained need to be restrained. Think of a serial killer who says they will continue to kill if let free. But this pragmatic concern needs to be reconciled with their lack of free will. Perhaps this means incapacitating them in home confinement, or in a prison setting that is not so uncomfortable and unnecessarily horrible. There may need to be some type of incapacitation and restraint that is not in the punitive environment like conventional prisons, but rather one that mainly focuses on just isolating the criminal from those he would seek to do harm to. Restorative justice aims to aid the victims. This type of justice seeks to make the victims whole again, to fix the harm that was done to them. Even without free will, it seems sensible to have a transgressor help a victim by paying them money or in some other way trying to fix what has been done to them. Just as a criminal did not choose to harm a victim, the victim did not choose to be harmed. Denunciation justice seeks to signal to society the wrongfulness of a criminal's actions. Without free will, maybe this could just come in the form of a formal verbal and written condemnation by a court, or maybe it would come in the form of educating the public on the moral and ethical implications of certain crimes. If we live in a world without free will, our legal system should focus on the types of justice that are not in total opposition to this. Rehabilitation, deterrence, incapacitation, restorative, and denunciation-based justice all make some sense in a world without free will. But do they make total sense? Those who break the law are victims themselves. They are victims that are merely conscious observers to their actions. They are not the true authors of their actions. What would a fair outcome be for a criminal? Does the word fair really have any actual meaning in a world without free will? Perhaps not. Perhaps a total and novel reconstruction of our legal system needs to take place. I may have raised more questions than I have answered in this video, but for the time being, if there is no free will, then judges, lawmakers, prosecutors, and the average person all need to start seriously re-examining their motives and ideas surrounding justice.